Stop what you're doing and think about what you ate for dinner last night. If you reheated any of it in the microwave, there's a real chance you added something dangerous to that meal without realizing it. Not a small, abstract risk that might affect you decades from now. A measurable chemical exposure that, according to recent research, directly threatens the aging brain. And seniors are uniquely vulnerable because of how their bodies change after 60. Today, we're covering 7 specific foods that undergo chemical transformations when microwaved. Some of these are obvious, most are not, and at least 3 of them are probably sitting in your kitchen right now. The chemical compounds they release have names you may have never heard before, but researchers who study Alzheimer's disease, cognitive decline, and neurological inflammation know them very well. After 60, your liver's detox capacity slows by roughly 30 to 40%. Your blood-brain barrier, the protective filter surrounding your brain, becomes measurably more permeable. That means toxins your body once cleared quickly can now accumulate where they cause the most damage. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and this channel is dedicated to bringing you the latest evidence-based research on senior health, explained clearly without the jargon and without the marketing spin. We publish new videos every week built specifically for people over 60. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now so you don't miss what's coming. Now let's get into the 7 foods. The first one will genuinely surprise you because it isn't really a food at all. It's the container. Specifically, any food you're microwaving in a plastic container or covered in plastic cling wrap. Millions of seniors reheat leftovers in the same plastic containers they used for storage. It seems completely logical, but here's what's happening during that process that you cannot see. Most plastic food containers, including ones stamped microwave safe, contain chemical compounds called bisphenol A or BPA, along with a group of compounds called phthalates. At room temperature, these compounds remain relatively stable inside the plastic. The moment heat is applied, they begin migrating directly into your food. Higher temperature, more migration. A 2022 study published in the journal Environmental Science and Technology found that microwaving food in plastic containers released measurable plastic particles and chemical leaches into food within minutes of heating. Here is why this matters specifically for your brain. BPA is an endocrine disruptor, meaning it interferes with hormone signaling throughout your entire body, including inside the brain. Research from environmental health scientists at the University of Rochester found that BPA exposure in adults over 60 was associated with measurable decline in executive function and working memory. Not occasional forgetfulness. Measurable functional decline shown on cognitive testing. The solution costs almost nothing. Transfer food to a glass or ceramic bowl before microwaving. A basic glass bowl from any kitchen aisle works perfectly. That single habit change addresses 3 of the 7 items on this list in one move. Now, we're moving to number 2, and this one concerns something many seniors enjoy as a quick and convenient meal. Processed meats, hot dogs, deli slices, pre-cooked bacon, sausages. When these products are microwaved, something happens at the chemical level that most people have never been told about. Processed meats are preserved using compounds called nitrites and nitrates. At room temperature or under gentle heat, these remain relatively stable. But intense microwave heat triggers a chemical conversion that transforms nitrites into a class of compounds called nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are among the most well-studied neurotoxic and carcinogenic compounds in modern nutrition research. A 2021 review published in the journal Neurotoxicology found that chronic nitrosamine exposure was significantly associated with hippocampal damage in aging brain tissue. The hippocampus is the brain structure most responsible for forming new memories. This same mechanism has led some researchers to explore nitrosamine exposure as a contributing factor to the cascade of changes seen in Alzheimer's disease, because nitrosamines impair insulin signaling specifically in brain tissue in ways that parallel what happens in the late stages of neurodegeneration. If you eat processed meats, heat them on the stovetop at medium-low heat rather than microwaving. The lower, slower heat dramatically reduces nitrosamine formation. And consider how often they appear in your weekly rotation. I want to pause here and ask you something directly before watching this video. How many of these first 2 habits were part of your daily routine? Leave a comment below and tell me your age and which of these you were doing, I ask, because the patterns we see from viewers on this channel consistently help me understand what to focus on next. And your honesty genuinely matters. We're only at number 2, and there are 5 more items on this list. Number 5 is something that a substantial number of seniors eat almost every morning, and the chemical reaction it triggers in the microwave is now one of the most actively studied contributors to neurological inflammation in the research literature. So stay with me. Number 3 on the list is the styrofoam container. Takeout boxes, convenience store soup cups, microwavable bowls made from foam. Styrofoam is polyirene and it leaches a chemical called styrene when exposed to heat, particularly moist, radiant heat like what a microwave produces. The National Toxicology Program classifies styrene as a reasonably anticipated human carcinogen. But beyond cancer risk, styrene is a documented neurotoxin. Occupational studies published through the National Institutes of Health have shown that adults with elevated styrene exposure demonstrate deficits in short-term memory, color discrimination, and reaction time. These are precisely the cognitive functions that begin declining first in adults over 60. Research shows detectable styrene migration into food begins within the first 60 seconds of microwave heating in a polystyrene container. If you are reheating yesterday's restaurant leftovers in the same foam box they came in, you are very likely consuming styrene with your meal. Transfer to glass every single time. Number 4 is one that surprises nearly every senior I have discussed this with because it involves something marketed directly to people as a health food. Leafy greens, specifically spinach, Swiss chard, kale, and beet greens. These vegetables are high in naturally occurring nitrates, which in the right context actually support cardiovascular health. But here is what changes after cooking and storage. When cooked, leafy greens are refrigerated. Enzymatic activity over 24 to 48 hours increases the conversion of nitrate to free nitrite within the food itself. When those already elevated nitrite levels are then exposed to high microwave heat, the same nitrosamine-forming reaction we discussed with processed meats begins to occur. A 2020 study published in Food Chemistry found that reheated cooked spinach showed significantly elevated nitrosamine content compared to spinach that was cooked fresh and served immediately. The implication is not that you should stop eating spinach. These vegetables remain among the most protective foods for brain aging when eaten correctly. The guidance is to eat them fresh and promptly after cooking, not to store them for 2 days and blast them in the microwave. If gentle reheating is necessary, use a pan with a small amount of water over low heat for 60 seconds rather than the microwave. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Margaret. She was 71, a retired school teacher sharp as anyone I've worked with. But she had noticed over about 2 years that she was struggling with word retrieval, names of familiar people, words she had used her entire life. Her diet looked excellent by nearly every standard, lots of vegetables, very little sugar. But when we walked through her exact daily habits carefully, I found that she was reheating large portions of spinach and kale in the microwave every single day, and doing so in the same plastic container she'd been using for years. After switching to glass containers and changing how she prepared and reheated her greens, she reported significant improvement in mental clarity within about 8 weeks. Dietary change is not a cure for cognitive decline, and there are many possible contributors to word-finding difficulty. But for Margaret, systematically removing consistent chemical exposure made a real and noticeable difference. Number 5. This is the one I mentioned earlier. It directly involves the cooking oil in your food and explains why reheated greasy meals may be particularly dangerous for senior brains. When cooking oils are heated, especially polyunsaturated vegetable oils like corn oil, soybean oil, and sunflower oil, they undergo a chemical process called lipid oxidation. This produces toxic byproducts called aldehydes, and the most researched of these is a compound called 4-hydroxynone, abbreviated H in multiple postmortem brain tissue studies, including research published in the journal Redux Biology. HN has been found in markedly elevated concentrations in the brain tissue of Alzheimer's patients compared to age-matched controls. HN binds to proteins inside brain cells and triggers a cascade of neurological inflammation that researchers believe directly accelerates cognitive aging at the cellular level. Here's the compounding problem. When you take food that was already cooked in vegetable oil, store it overnight, and then reheat it in the microwave, you are creating a second wave of aldehyde production on top of what was generated during initial cooking. The intense, concentrated heat of a microwave makes this substantially worse than gentle stovetop reheating. The practical fix has 2 parts. For your regular cooking, switch to extra virgin olive oil. Its monounsaturated fatty acid structure is significantly more heat-stable than polyunsaturated oils, and it contains natural antioxidants that partially counteract aldehyde formation. When reheating fatty foods, use low heat on the stovetop with the shortest possible time rather than the microwave. Number 6 connects directly back to plastic, but it deserves its own entry because this specific situation accelerates leaching at a rate that is genuinely alarming. Tomatoes and other acidic foods are stored or heated in plastic. Tomato sauce, tomato soup, salsa, chili, pasta with marinara. These are among the most common leftover foods in any kitchen. They are also highly acidic, and acidity dramatically accelerates BPA migration from plastic containers. Research from independent food safety laboratories and testing that has informed FDA guidance has shown that acidic foods can leach anywhere from 4 to 7 times more BPA from plastic under the same heating conditions compared to neutral foods. If you have been storing leftover tomato soup or pasta sauce in a plastic container and then microwaving it, you have very likely been receiving a substantially amplified dose of BPA every single time. Comment below if this is something you do regularly. I want to understand how common this pattern is among seniors watching this channel because it may be one of the most under-recognized sources of regular chemical exposure in this age group. And now, we arrive at number 7. This one affects millions of seniors who rely on it specifically for its convenience, and often because it's marketed directly to them as healthy, portioned, and appropriate for older adults. Frozen meals heated in their original plastic trays, frozen dinners, microwavable soups and plastic bowls, prepackaged heat and eat on tray. These products are specifically engineered for microwave use, which creates a false sense that the packaging is safe. But the overwhelming majority of commercially packaged frozen meals are sealed in multi-layer plastic trays that were never designed to maintain chemical stability at the internal temperatures a microwave reaches during heating. A study from environmental health researchers published in 2023 found that microwaving food and commercially packaged plastic food trays released hundreds of distinct plastic-associated chemical compounds into food with concentrations that exceeded what many previous safety thresholds had assumed. The researchers specifically noted that older adults, due to reduced metabolic clearance rates, face a higher risk of compound accumulation over time compared to younger populations eating the same food. The practical solution does not require giving up frozen meals entirely, though transitioning toward fresher alternatives over time is worth considering. The immediate action is simple. Empty the frozen meal contents into a glass or microwave-safe ceramic bowl before heating. It takes 30 seconds. When you have options, choose frozen meals packaged in cardboard trays rather than plastic, as these are increasingly available and present a meaningfully lower chemical risk. Let me tell you about Harold. He was 68 when his wife first noticed he was repeating stories he had told just minutes earlier and occasionally struggling to remember names of longtime family friends. Standard cognitive assessments came back without a definitive diagnosis. When we did a careful lifestyle inventory, it emerged that Harold ate a frozen meal for lunch nearly every weekday, always heated in the tray, and had been doing so for several years. His family also stored all leftovers in plastic containers that showed significant wear and scratching, which increases leaching substantially. There was no way to establish direct cause and effect. That is simply not how nutrition research works. But after systematically replacing his kitchen storage with glass and eliminating the plastic tray microwave meals, his wife reported that the repetition had noticeably decreased over the following 3 months. That is consistent with what the science on BPA and phthalate reduction would predict. Here is exactly what you need to do this week based on everything we have covered. First, go to your kitchen today and remove every plastic container you use for reheating food. Replace them with glass storage containers with glass or BPA-free silicone lids. Look for glass meal prep containers with lids at Walmart, or a quality set of 4 containers typically runs between $15 and $30. This single change protects you from items 1, 6, and simultaneously. Second, from this point forward, when you bring home restaurant leftovers or takeout, immediately transfer the contents to a glass container before refrigerating or reheating. Never microwave food inside styrofoam packaging, even briefly. Third, if you eat processed meats, limit them to no more than once per week and heat them on the stovetop at medium-low temperature rather than microwaving. This significantly reduces nitrosamine formation without requiring you to give up foods you enjoy. Fourth, with spinach, kale, Swiss chard, or any high-nitrate leafy greens, aim to eat them within 1 to 2 hours of cooking. If gentle reheating is necessary, do it in a pan with a small splash of water over low heat for no more than 60 seconds. Avoid storing these vegetables for multiple days and reheating in the microwave. Fifth, Make extra virgin olive oil your primary daily cooking fat. It is dramatically more heat-stable than polyunsaturated vegetable oils and significantly reduces aldehyde formation during both cooking and reheating. Sixth, immediately stop microwaving frozen meals inside their original plastic trays. Transfer the contents to glass first. Look for cardboard tray options when they are available. Before changing your diet significantly, please speak with your physician, particularly if you are managing cardiovascular disease, diabetes, kidney disease, or are taking blood thinners or other medications that interact with dietary changes. These are general evidence-based guidelines drawn from published research, not personalized medical prescriptions. If you are experiencing worsening cognitive symptoms, please see your doctor promptly, as cognitive decline can have multiple causes that require proper clinical evaluation. What today's research tells us is that protecting your brain after 60 is not only about what you eat, it is about what happens to that food before it reaches you, how it is stored, and crucially, how it is heated. The chemicals we covered today, BPA, phthalates, nitrosamines, styrene, and toxic aldehydes, are not theoretical concerns. They are measurable compounds with documented mechanisms of harm in the aging brain. And the actions that protect you from them are genuinely simple. I want to hear from you. Comment switching to glass. If you're making this change this week, comment your age and how many of the 7 foods we covered you were regularly microwaving before watching this. If someone you love is doing this every day without knowing the risk, comment sharing, because sending this video to a family member could actually matter. If this was valuable to you, please subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. Next week, we are covering a specific mineral that over 60% of adults past 60 are deficient in, and new research is directly connecting that deficiency to the brain's nighttime waste clearing system, the same process your brain uses during deep sleep to flush out the proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. You will not want to miss it. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Thank you for taking your brain health seriously.